Wrestling is known for its larger-than-life characters, whether it's personality or size, but when it comes to height and weight, promoters live by the phrase, the bigger the better, looking for extraordinary physical specimens to fill the seats. As we all know, however, promoters aren't afraid to exaggerate, so just who holds the record for being professional wrestling's tallest competitor, and who holds the record for its heaviest? Join us now as Wrestlelamia presents Today I Learned Wrestling Episode 2, Who is the tallest and heaviest wrestler in history? First, let's look at the tallest, as wrestling has had its share of tall men, but Andre the Giant still remains the standard by which all big men are judged. Ironically, Andre isn't wrestling's tallest competitor, and to be frank, doesn't come close to the top candidates. Nonetheless, Andre's long and successful career still ranks him as the 8th wonder of the world, despite coming up short in the record book, being a legitimate 7 foot 3 inches. However, there were other larger-than-life wrestlers, the likes of the man who was billed as Andre the Giant's son in WCW, the Big Show Paul White, who measures in surprisingly at just under 7 feet. The exact same height as a man he's met in the ring numerous times, the Big Red Machine Kane, and The Undertaker stands just underneath at 6 foot 10 inches. However, it doesn't stop there, as there's been many giants in the WWE, as wrestlers like the Great Khali and short-lived Oddity stable member Giant Silver would be slightly higher at 7 foot 1 and 7 foot 2 inches respectively. If you were an avid viewer of WCW around the mid-90s, you may have come across the second tallest wrestler to step in the promotion, Ron Reese, a man who played numerous ill-fated gimmicks including the Yeti, the Super Giant Ninja, Big Ron Stud, standing in at 7 foot 2 inches. We're not done just yet though, as there were taller wrestlers in other promotions, as whilst the WWE had the Great Khali as their Indian giant, New Japan Pro Wrestling had their short-lived one, and for good reason. Standing in at 7 foot 3 inches, Raja Lion was a man who boasted an impressive stature, but appalling in-ring wrestling skills. But during the earlier years of wrestling, many promotions took kayfabe to a whole new level, as they would exaggerate a wrestler's height to new levels. That was the case with German-born wrestler Gargantua Kurt Zehe, who was billed at 8 foot 4 inches and weighed 50 stone, when in reality he was 7 foot 2 inches and weighed almost half of that. The AWA Silo Sam was another victim of exaggeration, as he was billed at 7 foot 7, when in fact he places right next to Raja Lion at 7 foot 3 inches. Silo Sam, real name John Harris, entered film immortality when he appeared in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was a tall man, but his height was never verified and he died in 2005. Harris entered professional wrestling in the 80s, but what about present-day giants of the same height? Well, that honour would go to Nigerian-born wrestler Jordan Omobehin, who is currently wrestling in NXT developmental brand and stands in at an impressive 7 foot 3 inches. But we're taking a big leap from that height, as the second tallest wrestler to ever step foot in a ring is Max Palmer, who was known by the name Paul Bunyan. No, not the Simpsons character. The former actor-turned-wrestler debuted in 1954, and he was at the time the tallest athlete ever, standing at a legitimately enormous 7 foot 7 inches. Again, this may not have been verified though. Bunyan would only wrestle for a few years before retiring and becoming an evangelist until his death in 1984. But if not Paul Bunyan, then who was wrestling's tallest performer? Just like any measurement in wrestling, hyperbole comes into play, but thanks to a weakening of kayfabe and better records, we can establish that Giant Gonzalez, aka El Gigante, is wrestling's tallest competitor who ever lived. The former Argentinian basketball player George Gonzalez stood at 7 foot 7 1/4 inches before coming to the United States to play for Ted Turner's Atlanta Hawks NBA team. A knee injury made it difficult for him to adapt to the NBA, but Gonzalez found work in WCW as the Giant, and later in the WWF as Giant Gonzalez. Billed at 8 feet tall, Gonzalez suffered the same problem as many of the wrestlers on this list, as he had severely limited wrestling skills. He was of course more of an attraction. But during the late stages of his life, his health steadily declined, where he suffered from diabetes, severe heart and kidney problems, and underwent dialysis on a daily basis. He was then later unable to walk on his own, needing a wheelchair. Sadly, due to the fact he never made it as either a successful basketball player or wrestler, he experienced difficulty paying for medical bills. The Argentina Basketball Federation held various fundraisers to help him pay for the treatment and care, but in 2010, he passed away at the age of 44. Gonzalez left a record that has so far been untouched, and he is known as the tallest wrestler ever to step foot in a ring. But what about the heaviest? As height can be a spectacle, but promoters long ago discovered fans enjoying watching the big boys battle opponents, making them a star attraction. Supersized stalwarts such as Yokozuna, Crusher Blackwell, or King Mabel made for fierce foes to throw at babyfaces, but in some cases, the big boys competed on the side of angels, men such as Haystacks Calhoun. As you might expect, some of the tallest wrestlers were also the heaviest, including Andre the Giant and the Big Show. Still, let's determine who was wrestling's heaviest man. The WWE has been no stranger to colossally waist-sized men, as big men such as the One-Man Gang and King Kong Bundy all weighed in excess of 400 pounds, but that was nothing compared to wrestlers like Andre the Giant and King Mabel, who both tipped the scale at over 500 pounds. However, history has shown that wrestlers can be even heavier than this, as some managed to reach 600 pounds plus, as during his heaviest stage, right before his passing, it was believed that former WWE champion Yokozuna was over the 600 pound mark. In fact, the WWE would not allow Yokozuna to wrestle due to his obesity in 1996 and was consequently sidelined. According to the Wrestling Observer, Yokozuna was still under contract with the promotion, but officials would only allow him to wrestle if he dropped his weight to 400 pounds, which he constantly failed to do. Yokozuna failed his physical numerous times, which barred him from wrestling in over 21 states, almost half the country. Yoko still managed to wrestle in independent promotions, where he was at the peak of his size, and rumor has it that Yokozuna wanted to get bigger. But to get that size in some kind of proportion, we'd like to tell you a story of Yokozuna and his flight woes. As whilst on a flight home from Japan, Kurt Hennig was seated next to him in first class and offered him a chocolate bar, to which Yokozuna graciously accepted. Little did Yokozuna know, Kurt Hennig gave him a chocolate containing laxative. And 3/4 of the way through, Yoko needed to go. However, he was too big to fit in the toilet cubicle. With nowhere to go at 30,000 feet in the air, Yoko had to be sent to the back of the plane, where newspaper was placed on the floor, and brave but horrified stewardesses had to hold up blankets to block up any view of the action. But as big as he was, some wrestlers still laughed in the face of Yoko in terms of weight, as the likes of Haystacks Calhoun and British wrestler Giant Haystacks were all recorded to be in the 630 pound range. They would still be topped by the second heaviest wrestlers of all time, which would be the Maguire twins, who weighed 770 pounds each. In fact, they hold a record for the world's heaviest twins with a combined weight of 1,468 pounds. But who's the heaviest wrestler of all time? Well, the holder of this title belongs to Happy Humphrey, who at one time weighed 802 pounds during his in-ring career. Humphrey began wrestling in the 1950s, becoming an immediate sensation. He wrestled fellow super heavyweight Haystacks Calhoun and taught a young Harley Race how to take bumps. According to Race, he served as Happy's driver and personal assistant early on in his career, and the future Hall of Famer was amazed at how accessible Humphrey made himself to his fans. Unfortunately, Happy's excessive weight led him to having to retire from the ring in 1962. This proved to be a blessing in disguise, as the enormous individual was able to lose an equally enormous amount of weight. A 1965 article in Time magazine detailed the amazing steps taken for the big man to attain a healthier weight. When he waddled into the Medical College of Georgia's Clinical Investigation Unit in Augusta to volunteer for obesity research, he tipped the hospital's meat scale at 644 pounds. No exercise. Volunteer Cobb lived a carefully regulated life for the next 83 weeks. He was confined to the air-conditioned clinic, permitted no exercise to avoid fluid loss through sweat, and given only measured amounts of food and water. Each day's intake was about 1,000 calories, but in 56-day cycles, he was shifted among a high-protein diet which included eggs, skimmed milk, ground beef, margarine, toast, tomato soup, ketchup, green peas, and applesauce. A high-carbohydrate diet with toast, corn, lima beans, shortbread, peaches, applesauce, pineapple, puffed rice, skimmed milk, grape juice, orange juice, and a bit of sugar. A high-fat diet with salt-free mayonnaise and butter, tomatoes, eggs, whipped cream, and cream cheese. While Humphrey is rumoured to have regained some of the weight, he lived until he was 62. But there you have it guys, the tallest and heaviest wrestlers to ever step foot in a wrestling ring. Are you enjoying the new series, and if so, are there any Today I Learned subjects you'd like Wrestlelamia to look at? Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.